Hello, so my name's Michael Conneely, and this is another session, another webinar of how to interpret the Vedic birth charts. And the thing is that my whole approach in my Star Wheel astrology and the Master Vedic astrology is always to look into Western astrology crossover if the person so requires. So this will be mainly focusing on the Vedic birth chart, but with very important Western crossover and comparison. And the other big feature is applied astrology, using the magnificent, powerful, and accurate declarations offered by psychodynamic Western astrology, evolutionary Western astrology, and above all, the vastness of Vedic astrology. We move on to ways of managing what we declare is there, how to manage the consciousness, how to heal, how to empower ourselves, and how to become the person we incarnated to be. Now, today we're looking at Louise's chart, so I'm now going to share my screen with Louise's chart, and hopefully we're going to see that. And I'm hoping everybody can see that okay. So, first of all, I'm just going to scroll up to the Vedic chart for Louise. Now, it starts off with a brief depiction of the two main ways of drawing the Vedic chart, North Indian and South Indian. And obviously, if you're reviewing this recording, you can freeze the screen and study the house sequence and the sign sequence for the two different chart drawing systems. So we're scrolling down now to, and I'll make it a bit bigger, to Louise's Vedic chart. I'm just going to briefly note it and do some Western astrology crossover, and then come back to Vedic astrology analysis in detail. So just noting Louise's Vedic chart. Well, ascendant is in Leo, a very powerful ascendant, and we'll be looking at what that means. It's ruled by the sun. The moon is in the 12th house in Cancer, so the moon. Now suddenly an echo.
Sorry, that's me.
Okay.
So
Thank you. Yes, and the sun is in Libra, in the 3rd house of obstacles, courage in overcoming obstacles, and creativity. The very important thing to say is that the sun is at its greatest possible debilitation in Louise's chart. We'll be looking at what the degrees of exaltation and debilitation are as we go down the display. Now, apparently, the debilitation is cancelled because Venus is in its own sign in Libra, the sign that Venus rules. But Venus is retrograde and is fairly near the edge of the sign, not totally desperately so. So we'll discuss to what extent the debilitation of this sun, and it is extremely debilitated, to what extent cancellation can be deemed to apply. And what does it mean when there's cancellation? Does it mean that the condition is wiped out, the difficult condition? Or does it mean, in fact, that we experience the difficult condition and yet we chose an incarnation where we'll be able to overcome it? And certainly I would submit that this applies. And in fact, certainly off the top of my head, 2 other members of this Vedic astrology, Master Vedic Astrology group have a debilitated sun. That's myself. I have sun at 1 Libra in Chitra Nakshatra, and my partner Maggie, who also has her sun in Swati Nakshatra, the same as Louise, but not quite so close to the debilitation degree. And so, in other words, one of the things that's probably brought us together is debilitated sun, but it's not the only sort of common theme that runs through the group charts. But notice, by contrast, Mars is incredibly strong in Capricorn, where Mars is exalted. But Mars is in the 6th house, well, the house of enemies, but of course that's, well, what is an enemy is disease, and so of course the 6th house is about, well, illness, but also health, healing, and right living, service. It's not considered a good house, but it gets better with age. It's a house that improves. Jupiter is retrograde in the 7th house of marriage, and then we come to the nodal axis. Now, in Vedic astrology, the nodes of the moon depict our incarnational destiny, interpreted by sign, Pisces, Rahu, Virgo, Ketu, by house, that's 8th house, 2nd house, Ketu. And what does this mean? You also use nakshatra, but I won't be, we won't have time to do that within the hour available. Notice that the 10th house of career is ruled by Venus, like the 3rd house of creativity. And so I was discussing with Louise whether she'd thought of taking up art for a career. And in fact, she's the most wonderful illustrator. And Venus is her Atma Karika, her soul indicator, her planet of greatest longitude. And so she incarnated with an unfinished task from a previous lifetime around Venus. And we'll be looking at detail of Venus, but clearly in Louise's case, it manifests as the most powerful creativity, indeed one that she could use for healing and helping others as well as illustrating. So let's quickly go down the other Vedic, there's the North Indian display of the Rashi or birth chart. And here is a statement. Again, you can freeze this if you want to look at it on reviewing the recording. So we have ascendant in Leo, which we've said, the sun debilitated in Libra, the moon in its own sign of Cancer, Mars exalted in Capricorn, Mercury in Scorpio, very investigative and psychic. But I notice in the Navamsha, the solar marriage chart, Mercury is in Cancer, which is considered good to have great enemy status. I think it's because Mercury can get very emotional. So Jupiter is in his own sign. I'm so sorry. Jupiter is in Saturn-ruled sign Aquarius, but does quite well in his own sign in the Navamsha. Venus, this is interesting, in his own sign Libra in the birth chart, but in the Navamsha soul marriage chart, again in his own sign, but in Taurus, his other sign. Saturn in Scorpio. Now, Saturn is transiting in the heavens now through Scorpio. Saturn is at about 4.5 degrees Scorpio now. It's been retrograding and then stationary, but he has started going forward again. And so when he reaches 14 Scorpio, Louise will experience her first Saturn return. And that is, we only experience Saturn returns once every 28, 29 years, because Saturn takes that long to go round the sun. And the first Saturn return is where we are impelled, we feel driven to find our status and standing in the world, the status and standing we need to manifest the tasks we came here to do this time in life. And so I feel Louise will be under great tension, growing tension, to manifest her standing in the world. I certainly was when I had my first Saturn return. I felt impelled to sort of improve my job standing. So Rahu in Pisces, Ketu in Virgo. Okay, Vedic astrology has the most wonderful lunar signs, the 27 nakshatras, ascendant in powerful Magha. Well, a great theme of Magha is its ancestral heritage and exploration of ancient spiritual forms. Sun in Swati Nakshatra, very briefly, quite a driven nakshatra that goes in for overrunning, but it can be good for bargaining, and it can have far too much scatter, so there's a great need to focus with Swati, if you have a planet there. Moon in Ashlesha, which is mystical and serpent-like. Mercury, Mars in Shravana, Mercury in Vishaka, Jupiter in Shatabhishak, the healer's sign. Now that's important. Venus in Vishaka. Now there's two Vishakas there. The symbol for Vishaka is the triumphal arch, and Vishaka people go from archway to archway of triumph in their lives at their best, although negatively Vishaka can be totally sort of overwhelming. The power animal is the male tiger, so it is a power that can be used for great good or great ill. The Saturn in Anuradha, ruled by Saturn itself. Ketu in the intensely creative Shitra. Rahu in the intensely mystical Revati. Notice the number of asterisks in nakshatras, and these are what's called Pushkara signs. They represent a weak link. Interpretations vary, but I would say they represent a weak link. But like Chiron in Western astrology, in the healing of the principle of those planets, you experience great success. And indeed, specifically Jupiter is especially well starred to experience great success. And I know that Louise's Jupiter is in the 7th house of marriage, and indeed it can bring successful marriage, Pushkara Jupiter. But also because it's in the healer's nakshatra, I would say success as a healer. So we come now to the Navamsha, the soul chart. Very, very briefly, Saturn is in the same sign in the Navamsha, the soul marriage chart, as in the birth chart. In other words, her Saturn is Vargotama. It has special power. And Saturn isn't an easy planet to have special power, because it can be associated with sadness, with one's own sadness, and dealing with the sadness of others. But it's very, very good on hard work, discipline, and structure. And it is in her 4th natal house. And so that may indicate, as it were, in the start, sort of blocks in mothering, because of course Moon in the 12th normally means a mother who is not satisfied at the time of birth, and who communicates that to the child. So the child, in a sense, reaches out. What is going on? What is going on? What's this oddness? And of course it creates a 12th house capacity for psychism, because the child is trying to sort out what the source of the mother's problem or unease or unsatisfiedness is. Add to that Rahu in mystical Pisces, we're already getting a very psychic person. And of course, when we come to the Western astrology, we will see that Sun is conjunct Pluto. And look, Rahu is in the 8th house. So in other words, Louise will feel impelled and driven to be, shamanic, and to, use Kundalini. It's a difficult and dangerous area. It needs a good teacher. But as with all of us, Rahu indicates the direction of our incarnation this time. We proceed from our past life position Ketu to Rahu, and it's driven. We have to purify our Rahu. Easier said than done, but that's why we're here. So she is here to investigate shamanic, healing, Kundalini, psychic depths, and like a lotus blooms from the mud, the flowering that can come through perception and management, healing and empowerment of these. Add to that Jupiter in the healer's nakshatra. Okay, back to the list. Well, there again, that's where the planets are now. So you notice Saturn is closing on Louise's birth Saturn here. This is important. Jupiter has entered Louise's first house, her Lagna, her ascendant. So I can't remember when, a few weeks ago, not long, Jupiter crossed the Gandanta zone from Cancer into Leo, a difficult time. And at the end of January, this coming January 2016, Rahu, the North Node, which technically always goes backwards, also enters her first house. And so the drivenness of Rahu, the expansionariness of Jupiter in the first house potentially could mean immense success in projection in the world. Remember, she's also experiencing her Saturn return. She is going to do very well. But there's a danger. And that is, Jupiter and Rahu in the same sign is a dangerous combination because Rahu pollutes the purity of Jupiter potentially. It's called Guru Chandala Yoga. So for the whole world, Guru Chandala Yoga will exist until August 2016. And indeed, all over India, in the Sarpa temples, purification rituals will take place. Louise will be challenged not to be too driven, and possibly not to even encounter dark teachers or dark phenomena, but to manage her mind so that the great power inherent is purely manifested. So, it will be I think an immensely powerful time coming up for Louise. Venus, of course, will re-enter her first house. I'm just trying to think when. I have a feeling it's November. So Venus entered Leo and then retrograded about a week ago, through the Gandanta zone back into Cancer. But Venus will return to powerful, sunny Leo. And, Venus can indeed be excessive in Leo. So, powerful times ahead for an artist, apart from anything else. Here we have her planets as indicators. Notice that that Venus is her Atmakarika, her soul indicator. And during Atmakarika periods, our lives can be completely tumbled if they're not on course to manifest the task of our Atmakarika. And it has lots of health issues around it. I'm in my Atmakarika period at the moment, and it's been very tough, but it seems to be manifesting wonderfully. The career indicator, the Amatya Karika, is the moon, which is, emotional, psychic, and imaginative. I think it goes well with Venus. And of course, that could indicate, for career terms, some sort of visionary art or, very imaginative, creative art that's not representational, if you see what I mean. I mean, what came into my mind, and I don't know if she does this, is sort of like, graphic novels and cartoons. And, I've just been reading a wonderful one on Krishna, for example. Right. So carrying on planetary strengths, notice that in her birth chart, Mars, it's difficult to read it, but that's Mars, there's Mercury. Mars is the most powerful. Now remember, Mars is, well, I haven't come to this, but Mars is exalted in Capricorn. It also is her Bhadak planet. We'll be coming to this. And I think there's a problem with Mars depicted in the Western astrology. So anyway, Mars is incredibly strong. It's her strongest planet in the Rashi, in terms of chart dignity, planets in signs. It's different in her soul chart. It's as if she was weak in that area in her last lifetime, and so she had the task of managing an overly strong Mars this time. And the combined dignities give Venus as the strongest planet, the Atmakarika, the soul indicator. There's another measure of strength, which is Shadbao, and all her planets are strong because all are rated more than 100. But notice Saturn is the strongest, very karmic, dealing with sadness, the sadness of others, needing structure, hard work, and discipline. Little statement here, again, it can be frozen if you review the recording, but basically, Venus is the lord of the third, and the third becomes, well, it's a house that can use malefics, except it hasn't got any. The Lord of the Third is a temporary malefic. That's an important point. So Venus is a temporary malefic. But of course, the third house gets better with age, or Pachaya. That is a brief statement of the exact degrees of exaltation and fall. There we have 10 Libra is the greatest degree of fall, and Louise's sun is at something like 9:36, 9 degrees 36 minutes of Libra, very deeply fallen. And what does that mean? Well, it has health implications and ability to hold one's own in almost anything, and to even speak one's truth. I mean, I have a sun in Libra, and I certainly find those things, health, holding my own, it can even manifest like feeling being noticed. And of course, it's about the sun, so it says something about the role of father, the paradigm given by father to the child, I would say. So if we carry on down, yes, we're now into the realm of Western astrology, just making it so, I hope that's visible in the screen. So Western astrology depicts our egoic psychology. It's based on the tropical zodiac, which has as its start point the sun's position on the first day of spring. That's Naut Aries in the tropical zodiac. And so it's sun-based, it's sun sign, and it's therefore egoic. In other words, an egoic reaction to our destiny. Vedic astrology is sidereal zodiac, linked to a fixed star, and so that depicts our incarnational life purpose, and not exactly our egoic psychological reaction to it. So let's just pick out, what can we see? Chiron is in the 10th house of career, healer. Chiron is opposite Uranus, indeed a tight opposition. I mean, many people have Chiron opposite Uranus, so it depends on how tight the opposition orb is. And so Chiron opposite Uranus, well, basically it's a wound to being valued, and therefore being very impatient to find value. And of course, you can't really find value that way. You have to value yourself. It's very forefront and can use unconventional new approaches. Very creative often. I mean, that chart aspect shape is a righteousness rectangle, but it's only got 2 planets as corners, because the other 2 corners are the nodes of the moon. So whether it works as a righteousness rectangle, I don't know. But very briefly, a righteousness rectangle is someone who says, I've got it all right, and I know the answer, and I feel a bit sorry for you because you're in a mess. I'm exaggerating here. Notice that Mars is opposite the moon, which is not good, because the moon doesn't like the excoriation and irritation of Mars. So that says something about how Louise experienced Mother, and it has an effect on Louise's consciousness, because Moon is Mother and our consciousness arising therefrom, and so to have Mars opposite it will mean constant sources of irritation to be managed in the life, I feel. And above all, notice Sun conjunct Pluto. Right, well, I'm going to sort of go into that in a bit more detail once we've gone through the charts, but that is so powerful potentially. It can be very controlling. It can be very psychic. And because it's in Scorpio, probably horrendous hurt, vulnerability, especially when coupled with the debilitated nature of the Sun. And the thing about Sun conjunct Pluto is that it's people who can adopt a dogma, and so they can live life by system and impose it on others. And I do know teachers who get to a great level of spiritual insight and sophistication, but gridlock themselves in a paradigm rather than live. I have found it can be associated with relationship difficulties, and certainly I know people who got great exalted position as spiritual teachers but have had to abandon relationship. And I feel that maybe because they didn't handle the Sun Pluto in the best way. In other words, they did something to their lives which turned it into a control trip. Okay, that's just sharing some anecdotal reaction. The psychodynamic chart, Megastar, the Swiss Huber School, Grand Trine in Fire, Moon, Trine the Node, Trine, Uranus. Now, Grand Trines point to a huge potential harvest of talent. But trines are lazy aspects, and so Louise will have to work to make her harvest. Okay, what is it? Well, the node is in the 8th house, as it is in Vedic astrology. So it could be said to be about partnership issues, and certainly about psychism. Moon is in the 12th house, so it could be said to be how we go beyond this world, foreign paths, foreign parts, institutions, typically spiritual institutions, but above all, intuition, mysticism, psychism. And those 2 trine Uranus, which is forefront, originality, and or it can be sort of cranky and spasmodic. So grand trines are difficult to manage, and I've got a handout on what grand trines mean and what grand trine in fire means. Notice that Mercury is an unaspected subpersonality. So that means that Louise may not be able to access Mercury faculties at times. At other times, she might be over conceptual and over formulaic, because an unaspected subpersonality, we can either live in it or not be able to contact it, and it varies where we are predictively in terms of our age progressions, especially. Oh, and note that the Sun Pluto is sextile Neptune. How psychic is that? Oh, and here's a statement of the chart aspect shapes in the psychodynamic birth chart. And so there's the unaspected Mercury. There's the grand trine. So I'll leave that. Where is she predictably? This is very important. This age point is our individuation age point, where we draw our egoic self, the psychology of our egoic self together. It starts off here at the ascendant and takes 72 years to go around the chart, carrying on if we live longer, through the signs, through the houses, and aspecting the planets. Note this. Her age point, excuse me, the individuation age point is squaring Sun Pluto. Tremendously important. It's all about power and possibly hurt and vulnerable sense of power. But of course, all the Sun Pluto qualities, which I'll be coming to, you know, which are so sort of intuitive and, you know, tremendously powerful and difficult to manage. But there's the second age point, the nodal age point. That's those three concentric red triangles, and that's on top of her Mercury. Mercury is, of course, about conceptual knowledge and communication. In other words, now, Louise is called to unify lower mind and sort of intense investigative psychic stuff. I mean, intuitive healing breakthroughs type of thing, I would say. Okay, that is her chart of nurture. In the chart of nurture, I'll make this a bit bigger, the houses are of equal size, whereas in the birth chart, the signs are of equal size. And this is because houses are our environment. Now notice that it's created an unaspected subpersonality of her Neptune. In other words, her upbringing didn't validate her psychism. I have an unaspected Neptune subpersonality, and I find that my psychism comes and goes. And certainly when Louise's Neptune is activated by an age point, or maybe transits, there could be tremendous psychic breakthrough. And I could look up, but not on screen because I can't access the program, you know, when that great hit will be, when the age points conjunct and oppose Neptune. So it'll only happen one of each in this lifetime. I mean, when is it mine? I had clairvision, clairaudience for 3 years. It arose and fell away, and I sort of wrote 2 visionary novels because of what I saw and heard. So, you know, it could be something like that for Louise. So, telemicroscope. We're looking at the chart aspect shapes in the chart of nurture. Now, I need to send Louise the meaning of that if she hasn't already got it. But it is the ability, here it is, the ability to look into the distance, but also to take microscopic. And so she can unify the micro detail and the vast picture. There is the risk of too many ideas causing confusion and disorientation. So the person is curious, blah, blah, blah. So this is a very important thing created by the pressures of her earliest upbringing, her environment. In other words, particularly her earliest environment as a tiny child. So that needs to be read in full. So I've covered that. Right. Let's look at a few meanings. So I'm going to put up the birth chart so you can follow it. I'm just going to make it bigger, so it'll hopefully fill your screen more. And go to the meanings in Louise's chart. Well, as I said, the rising sign, the Lagna, is in Leo. And so the key concept is being the center of the universe, focuses on commanding. The sun rules Leo. Vitality, leadership, sunny personality, all that sort of thing. Faith in friends, skilled organizer. And all these qualities Louise has, but there is a debilitation around her sun. What does that mean? How does she cure it? Well, the whole purpose of this reading, we'll come to that. The ruler of the first is placed in the third house, so it's very creative. The third house is a house of obstacles, but we can meet those with courage, strong will, and perseverance, and creatively. Now, Sun is in Libra, ruled by Venus, and so, as we've said, you know, the Sun isn't placed well in Libra. Libra is the sign of the other, and so a Libra Sun endlessly gives him or herself away. Let me be the glove that fits your hand. It's a great contradiction to Sun-ruled ascendant. How confusing, how painful. It's Nietzsche or debilitated, 10 degrees. And the qualities are charming, alluring, soothing, attractive as mate, though poor as partner. Now, I disagree with that because I have a Libra Sun. And these are only buzzwords anyway. Artistic, helps the less fortunate. It is compassionate, I feel. It's intuitive and creative. Venus is in Libra, so Venus occupies his own sign. And it's full of loveliness and artistry. Elegant, well-respected, artistic, sensual, etc., etc. And yet, Venus is retrograde. He also rules, of course, the 10th house of career, his own sign, Taurus. I sort of think, could it be important to watch sugar intake and potential sort of diabetic potential later on? It just came to me. It is a curse, I feel, of Libra, Venus Sun people. Anyway, retrograde planet. Well, when a planet is retrograde in our birth chart, we have to make special efforts to understand it. In other words, we get it wrong, but in our mistakes we learn to get it right, hopefully. And in Venus's case, that can be perfecting artistic expression. Venus in the third house is about artistic expression. Creative writer, gives seminars, speeches on art, journalist, computer artist. Ruler of the 10th in the third house, career in something creative, muse, dance, drama, art. But the career will only advance through hard work and self-effort, ruler of the 10th in the third. Can be in the literary and communications fields. Now, Venus is Atmakarika. Venus issues were an unfinished thing in the previous life, an unfinished task. And so Louise particularly has to understand Venus, and that is actually difficult. Venus is not at all the sort of gooey-cooey feature that some Western astrologers present Venus. I did send out before the webinar a statement of the nakshatra padas, the nakshatra divisions, the divisions of the lunar signs that Venus rules. And they are incredibly complicated. And I think Venus is much more, I think aggressive is the wrong word, but creatively or sexually aggressive than Western astrology realizes. But Venus can't stand Mars, and I think many Western astrologers think Venus and Mars go well together. But Venus doesn't like Mars's aggression. If I sort of zoom down to that table I sent you of nakshatra padas, and the ones ruled by Venus, they are all complicated. So I'm just trying how to say this. The second nakshatra, Bharani, has as its Venus-ruled pada, a Pushkara pada. Now, Pushkara is the weak link, as I said. Now, Venus is the preceptor of demons. You see, our sexuality and beauty and creativity can all be for darkness and indulgence and so forth. And, cloying sweetness and dishonesty and even alcohol and sugar binges and things. But Venus is the preceptor of demons. Venus purifies his shadow. And so that's one of the reasons Louise is here, most definitely, with Venus at Makara, because she has a complicated destiny around purification. You see, what we're supposed to do with Pushkara nakshatras is purify those planets, and she has 3 of them. And Venus is her Atmakarika. So the next one is in Rohini lunar sign, the 4th one in Taurus. Venus rules a Pushkara part again. In Punarvasu, Venus rules a Pushkara. This is statistically way out of what you'd expect. It's not correct. You know what I mean? It's not statistically conformative. It's exceptional. So we'll carry on down. Venus in Push isn't any special characteristic, but it's Venus in Purva Palguni is Pushkara. Venus in Hasta is Pushkara. Venus in Chitra is Vargotama. That's being the same sign in the Navamsha as your birth chart. Look at this. Venus in Vishaka is Pushkara and Ashtamamsha, the most difficult 8th house energy of darkness yet transformation. Venus in Anuradha is Vargotama. Venus in Purvashada is Pushkara, and so on and so forth. In other words, we need to study Venus, and one of the ways the Master Vedic Astrology course works is that in addition to the Facebook postings and sharings, and in addition to the webinars, people write in-depth reports on each of their planets. First Louise is Venus, and then my Venus, Louise's moon, and my moon. And maybe Louise could really, really, really study Venus, the astrological Venus, Venus as God, and indeed possibly look at parallel deities to Venus. Some of the Babylonian ones, maybe. The Norse equivalents. You can do vision work, and so if Louise wanted, I think it would be wonderful to take that sort of in-depth look at Venus. And indeed, we're building up to Maggie offering healing around debilitation, because of course you see, it's not only about study astrology, it should be linked to healing and empowerment. Otherwise it can be disempowering, and so many astrologers become the disempowering guru, repetitively churning out the rules or whatever. Right, so we'll nip back to Venus as Atmakarika. And I've got there. So if I can just close that box. So the next thing I want to say is that Mars is her Bhadak planet. Now, what's that? Well, first of all, what is a Bhadak planet? Well, it depends on your ascendant, and for Leo ascendant, it's the ruler of the ninth house. And so in Louise's case, the ninth house is Aries. So Mars, the ruler of Aries, is a Bhadak planet. Well, what's a Bhadak planet? Hidden, unseen, and shadowy obstacles in your life, especially in the area of health. Okay, zip back to the Western astrology, that Mars opposite Moon. Mars opposite the 12th house Moon. So Mars needs to be studied in depth in Louise's life. Mars very strong, exalted in Capricorn, but in the 6th house of health issues, and yet healing. So Mars is her Bhadak planet, and it can cause disease and make the illness hard to cure or get rid of. It can include ancestral curse, and Maggie certainly does healing techniques which identify and clear ancestral curses using, for example, body code. Although I think Maggie is proposing to use emotion code for the purpose of this webinar. Oh yes, and I've said here that Maggie's body code website, www.bodycodehealing.co.uk. Right, the moon phase at birth, Tithi, is ever so important. It can make or break a birth chart according to the Vedic worldview. And yours is in the ninth day of the moon, which is ruled by Durga. And Durga fought to slay the great demon whom none of the gods could vanquish. And so she was actually created as a powerful force to destroy the invincible Maha Asura, which the other gods were unable to vanquish themselves. Durga rides. I've got this beautiful picture of her from Scandavale, where it's a Hindu ashram I stayed at on for 5 years plus. She's riding this beautiful white marble tiger, and she's, grinning happily and brandishing endless weapons. So this is your moon phase, Louise, and I'm sure you could draw the most beautiful Durga. But of course, what does she really destroy? She destroys Mahamaya, the world of illusion. In other words, going through it to become enlightened and visionary. By the way, I don't define enlightenment in a world-denying way. We are here to manifest and work on and develop our talents, as defined by our birth chart, indeed. And we're here to burn our negative karmas. And so I think so much of what passes for enlightenment can be spiritual bypass and denial. So I'm merely saying that. I think obviously it's an incredibly difficult thing to do. And yet, you see, if a teacher is a bad teacher, it can actually make the students go mad. And I've seen it happen. And it can disempower them. So Navami, moon phase people, can feel oppressed with their inner demons and can feel unsupported. They need to fight for a long time to overcome their inner anxieties, fears, and worries. Now, what's come into my mind there is mantra. And I know that Sun conjunct Pluto people can very, very, very powerfully and successfully use mantra to stabilize themselves and stabilize their mind. And indeed, Maggie and I do Shiva mantra every morning, and I do find it definitely stabilizes my mind. This is me with a stabilized mind, I'm sorry to say. But and we do it in front of the Shiva Nataraja Murti, and it is so beautiful. Such a paradigm of how to go through life with beauty and power and creativity. And of course, who does he dance on? Shiva Nataraja dances on Aparasmara, the demon of ignorance. And it's said that the demon is happy to be danced upon. Okay, very briefly now, we're in the last 10 minutes. why are you here, your nodal axis. Well, it isn't just your nodal axis, because you're here to manifest all that creativity and to manage your debility and find healing and empowerment. But essentially, you will do it, well, you've got Rahu in the 8th house, Ketu in the 2nd house. And so you will do it through contacting intuition, demons, kundalini work, subtle energies. And you do need to beware dark teachers. And it just comes to my mind that Guru Chandala Yoga in your 1st house, you have to be very careful who teaches you in the coming year from January 2016 to August 2016. On the issue of purity. But you incarnated to, and it's a difficult task having Rahu in the 8th house. But in fact, it creates great astrologers and researchers. Ketu in the 2nd house, it's not good for childhood, because the 2nd house is childhood as well as mouth. Oh, and there can be mouth illness issues. And speech, of course, because we speak with our mouths, and indeed, particularly ancient languages. But you see, Ketu there makes everything at its best incredibly mystical. But it does mean that there was a disconnection in your childhood. You may have been made to feel different or a misfit, or not somehow met the expectation, or been lonely. And indeed, that promoted your psychic investigative abilities, Rahu in the 8th opposite. And it's not easy to handle, particularly when one's young. But it creates deep natural wisdom and incisive insight. Remember your grand trine, the incisive insight. The psychic ability can become frightening. And indeed, it can become visionary. I know that you had some interest in shamanism. I do a lot of vision path work myself, contacting deities, and have done so for 20 years. I think you could be very good at that. And again, rightly or wrongly, comic novel, the graphic novel thing. I did post on Facebook some of that graphic novel about Krishna and Vishnu, and I wondered if you could produce beautiful graphic novels. But of course, it may not suit you. I'm just wondering. So, Albert Einstein had Rahu in the 8th house. So I hope you'll still speak to us when you've published your theory. Right. But of course, by sign, Rahu is in Pisces, Ketu is in Virgo. Well, Virgo is all about health, heating, and right living, and Pisces is all about intuition, so it's an intuitive healer. Let me get this right. You see, Ketu could, in a sense, dissolve Virgoan order for you. And Rahu in Pisces could journey into confusion and chaos. But the correct response is to marry and harmonize the immensely creative inspiration from nowhere qualities with structure, right living and healing, if you sort of see what I mean. In other words, if you sort of see what I mean, it's the practical mystic. So I hope that sort of helps. It's said that people with Ketu incarnate to struggle against the restrictions, Ketu with Virgo, to struggle against the restrictions of Virgoan earthiness, maybe being too materialistic in a past life, and so needing to go on to your next level of maturity. And certainly letting go of preconceived ideas and concepts, because you are an intuitive, you are a mystic, and so you mustn't gridlock yourself with spiritual path methods or healing regimes. You must always be true, and you must learn to contact your intuition. I mean, rightly or wrongly, kinesiology came to mind. Something like that, and maybe dowsing, and certainly I keep thinking vision work. I'm just sort of wondering if you could develop, in a sense, as a visionary reader of people and a visionary healer. I mean, even psychic surgery. I know because I know you're very, you're obviously totally attuned by your life situation to illness and healing. So, these are all, it'll be very conformative with your astrology. Right. What else? Oh, yes, Jupiter in Shatterbashak, the healer's sign. Incredible. Looking at Sun Pluto now, and we're in the last 5 minutes, was striving for power through immense effort, physical or mental, unusual creative efforts. Now, I think your powers are too much for your frame. So Mars is your Bhadak planet. Sun Pluto burns, it's the dark star. And of course your sun is debilitated, giving health issues, and you have 3 Pushkara planets. So what I'm trying to say is that your exalted Mars is too much for your frame, maybe. And the Sun-Pluto intensity is just too much. You're carrying a burning phoenix. And this can bring sort of like, well, the buzzwords, lingering illness. It can be powerfully psychic. It certainly can bring great understanding of cosmic law, intuitive. You'll be able to read people and advise them and set them straight. Give them the meaning. I think using astrology and using psychodynamic and Vedic and evolutionary astrology, I really do think you'll be able to use those methods and say to people, as it were, this is it. You would have the confidence to talk about the meaning of their life phase and the timing, what the meaning of time phenomena like transits and dashes is. The other big thing about Sun conjunct Pluto is the ability to regenerate and change yourself. There's the danger of power complex. And of course your sun is debilitated, I would say becoming victim to people using power, gurus and maybe. There can be extremism, there can be polarizing of views, and I mentioned this, the hardline philosophy. So often I have found these wonderful spiritual teachers who gridlock into sort of dogma, and so often it can ruin what they do, because so often it might be purely cultural, no more than that. So often it could be legalistic, no more than that. But you're an intuitive, you mustn't get put into a box. You must see that all methods are fingers pointing to the moon. They're not the moon. Your spirit and mind will reach out to lasso the moon. You could be attracted towards power like a moth to a candle. Or you could become one-pointedly ruthless or driven, and of course you'll just have a health burnout every time you do that, just like me. It is such hurt intensity, and yet it carries such greatness. So now I think I'm going to stop sharing the screen, the chart, and what I'd like to do, if it's all right with Maggie, is to hand over to Maggie to talk about maybe issues of debility, for example, ill health and painful issues around self-expression, and see if, for example, EFT could be used possibly to define perhaps that debility and the way out. So can I hand over to you, Maggie? Hello?
Hi, I've just unmuted myself. Can you hear? Yeah.
Yes, I can. Should I unwhite box myself?
Yes.
And do I then mute myself?
Yes, you can mute yourself if you like, yeah.
See, I don't know how to do it. Do you want me to just mute?
You can just keep quiet. Hi. Louise, do you want to unmute yourself? I'll do it for you if you like. Do you want to just... No, I can't do it. Do you want to just toggle and go to the top and put your microphone back on again?
Hello, I think I've done it.
Hi, yeah.
Hi.
Good. So, first of all, Louise, I'd like to hear your reaction to Michael's reading and what really impacted you sort of physically or emotionally by that. You know, what was the thing that came out to you as the challenge there, or maybe the thing that seemed to either be the biggest thing for you to work on?
Well, I thought it was really fascinating, first of all. I was able to understand a lot more, I guess, now I've been studying it for several months. I think the things that stood out to me most were Venus, and what that's representing. And I know from looking at my dasha periods that Venus has tied in exactly with the chronic fatigue that I developed after I had glandular fever, and Venus Sun particularly, which I find very interesting because obviously Sun is my ascendant ruler, and conjunct Venus in that third house of obstacles. So I think that stood out to me very strongly, and also this strong Mars energy opposite Moon. I feel that is quite a repeating pattern of my life, that I go between the energy of Mars really in Capricorn of feeling very, very motivated, driven, strong, that sort of dynamic energy of wanting to get stuff done, and then ultimately I burn out, and then I go into Moon 12th house Cancer, very emotional, wanting to be isolated, nurture myself or be nurtured, and that's something I feel I really need to balance, because I can't keep swinging between the two as wildly as I do.
And that's interesting, because obviously is it your sun or your ascendant that's in Libra? Remind me.
My son's in Libra.
Your son, so
Yeah.
Libra's about balance. So yeah, and balancing the physical really. So when you think about that swing, does it, maybe we could work on that. I mean, also it occurs to me, as an artist, you could perhaps even draw those two aspects. Maybe you could work at drawing the part of you that is you know, it just is the go-getter and just wants to get on with things and goes forward, and then the other part that needs to be more is more vulnerable, and maybe get the two to befriend each other, because sometimes we can have two parts of ourselves that are almost like slightly warring with each other. And you know, to build a bridge between the two of them might be quite good. So, I'm just wondering if I can bring myself up like this. I know it's a very green room. I think I said that earlier on, so maybe we could. I think one of the easiest things to perhaps demonstrate here online is something like EFT, because it's very easy for us to do. And so where are you at the moment? Do you feel balanced at the moment, or do you feel on one of those sides?
Quite often, mentally, I feel my energy is with Mars, and then physically, I'm not able to do as much as I want to, so that's often quite a struggle. Yeah.
And I sense that, I don't know. Do I sense that you prefer the Mars energy?
I think I'm going through a period at the moment that I am swinging more towards that Mars energy, but as I said, it does go between the two, and I don't think I've got a definite preference over them. But at the moment, I feel more driven to wanting to get stuff done.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, well, let's just do some tapping on that. What would you call that? These two aspects. What would you call the relationship between the two? Would you call it a? Well, you tell me what you'd call it.
Don't know really. Pain in the bum, maybe.
Pain in the bum. Is it like a swing from one thing to another, like a seesaw, or is it?
Yeah,
do they fight each other? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It does swing, and I'd like to learn how to harness both, because I feel that the intuition and the sensitivity of the moon, combined with that, the energy of Mars and being driven and wanting to get stuff done, I don't know if it ever can totally work together, but if I can make it more harmonious, it would be more pleasant for me.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so just tap on the side of your hand here on the karate chop. Well, just down, what we call a karate chop, so it's just down from your little finger. Even though I have this, what did we say it was? This energy that swings from one side to the other. Would that be a good description?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it would. Yeah.
Even though I swing from Mars to this Mars energy that just wants to get things done, to this sensitive. Would you call that the moon energy? Is that what you were saying? The sensitive, sensitive moon energy that wants to be much more gentle and is intuitive. And sometimes the relationship between the two is, what would you call it?
Quite fraught, I think.
It's quite fraught. Even though there's this quite fraught relationship between Mars and my moon, I deeply and completely accept myself. Do you want to say that with me?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Do you want me to repeat it?
Yeah, and tap along with me. Yeah, I can't. Yeah. So even though there's this fraught relationship between Mars and the moon.
Even though there's this fraught relationship between Mars and the moon.
Deep down, I'm okay.
Deep down, I'm okay.
Even though there's this fraught relationship between Mars and the moon.
Even though there's this fraught relationship between Mars and the moon.
I accept myself anyway.
I accept myself anyway.
even though there's this fraught relationship
Even though there's this fraught relationship
between Mars and the Moon.
between Mars and the Moon.
I'm a natural balancer.
I'm a natural balancer.
I'm a natural peacemaker.
I'm a natural peacemaker.
I'm just picking up on the fact that you've got Sun in Libra.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I can apply that here.
So maybe I can apply that here.
So let's just tap on the Mars energy first of all. This dynamic Mars energy. Tell me about it. Just tell me about it. So top of the head, and then the eyebrow it makes the most. Tell me about Mars in you, how it is for you, and what you like about it.
Well, I like that it helps me to get things done and be very driven.
Yeah.
But it can also be very volatile, I think, and
Yeah.
cause me to burn out because I push too much and I'm too hard on myself as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
So it's dynamic and it helps me to get things done. But sometimes it's too dynamic. Sometimes it pushes me too hard, and then I burn out.
Yes.
Sometimes it's a bully. Is that right? Or maybe bully is the wrong word. Maybe it just gets too much. Is that?
Sometimes it feels like it's sort of charging ahead and I'm being pulled along behind it, trying to
Yeah.
catch up
Sometimes
something.
it's charging ahead. So sometimes it's great because it helps me get things done. But sometimes it's too much. And it just pulls me along and leaves me, how would you say, sort of exhausted?
Yeah, burnt
Yeah.
out, frazzled.
I'm burnt out and frazzled. And I wonder what it would be like. So let's just do a kind of a wandering. I wonder what it could be like if I could find a much more balanced way of using my Mars. It's funny because to me Mars and balance don't always go together. It seems a bit of an anomaly, really. But I think we can always ask for us to somehow bring in a different filter on something. So maybe there is a way of me being more aware of when this Mars energy is really helping me. Would that be good? And be aware when it's being too forceful. I wonder what that would be like. And I'm open to experiencing this dynamic Mars energy in a way that is much kinder. It is much kinder to my body. And maybe, just maybe, my intuition can help here. So bringing in the sensitive side of you, and maybe that sensitive side of you could help help you tune in to how to use Mars. That's what I'm just wondering. So tell me about the sensitive, intuitive side of you. Tell me about that. Tell me about your, the sensitivity. Tell me about how that is for you, just as you tap around these points.
Well, I've always been very sensitive and intuitive. I feel almost more so as a child.
Yes.
Than I feel currently, and I don't know why that is, or maybe it's a similar theme for lots of people, but it's something that I definitely want to be able to access more. Not only, well, I think my imagination's fine,
Yes,
which is good for the work that I do, but I'd also like to tie in being a healer with that in some capacity, whether through nutrition or some other kind of energetic healing, I don't know, but I feel that the sensitivity that my moon brings will be very helpful for that.
Okay, so let's just tap through that. There's this sensitivity that can be really helpful, and it could help a lot of people, and I feel it's there for a reason. I feel it's there to be used. I feel that there is a lot that I can offer. And what occurs to me, as you said that, is if you want to be a healer, and if you want to, use your intuition and reach people, then you need the energy and the drive to do that, don't you? And so maybe Mr. Mars could help you there. So maybe there's a way in which they could collaborate rather than fight. That's what I'm thinking of. Maybe it would be helpful for you to maybe use your intuition to tune in, to what's needed on a particular day. And maybe you could begin by just asking some very, very generative, open-ended questions, such as, what is my energy, my consciousness calling me to do today? What is the best expression of me today? And maybe it's going to be a mixture of those two energies. Maybe there are days when it's more gentle energy is called for, to actually just almost give the day over to be more inward and reflective and intuitive and, going inward. And then other times when what's required is for you to, take those insights and intuitions and put them into action, so that there is a kind of, an interweaving of those two energies, where they're kind of working together as mates and friends that can enhance your life. So that's what came to me. Does that seem something that would? How does that sound to you?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think what you were saying about Mars bringing that driven energy that you'd need if you wanted to be a healer and help other people. That's good to know and to utilize. And I think as it is in the Vedic chart in the 6th house, I think actually in both charts it's in the 6th house. So I know that's a house of enemies, but it's also a house of healing. So and with age it improves. So hopefully in time I'll get there with it all. Yeah.
And I think for me what would seem important would be for you to, especially as I was hearing that from what Michael was saying, that there could be times when maybe you could be a bit hard or dogmatic or forceful on yourself, to be more, to spend maybe a bit of time each day just tuning in gently, like, hey, what do you want today? What your body? What do you want to do? What's important for you to do today? As much as you're able to do it. Sometimes we've got deadlines we have to meet, but so so that you feel, like almost like you've got a paint box with different colours, so you don't go, I'm in blue mode and I'm going to be in blue mode all week, but to actually think, okay, what do I need, today? What do I need in this moment? And to tune into that and use it. So what I think we're it's probably good to just stop this particular phase of the webinar now, and maybe just suggest to you that you do that, and maybe you find a way of tuning into your feelings, either through drawing or through tapping or through dancing or meditation or whatever, and use that, and maybe go over your chart again and work with the things that you see there, rather than see them as solid and fixed. So shall I go back to you, Michael, and invite anybody to say whatever they need to say in whatever way? Yeah.
So yes, I'll take it. Hello.
Hello.
Right. So what I'd like to do is say, have you any questions, Louise?
I do have some questions.
Yes.
I was thinking about, I have been thinking about the past couple of weeks, Jupiter in my chart, and I've been working a bit with Jupiter, because I think I'm in my Venus Starship period.
You are.
And I know Jupiter's retrograde in my chart, and it's in the 7th house, and I think it's at its weakest position in terms of, is it Dikbala placement? So I think Jupiter prefers to be in the 1st house. It's at its strongest.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
At its weakest in the 7th house, and I wondered what your interpretation of that would be, really. What Jupiter's placement in my chart would mean, and in terms of relationships in the future, what does that have in store? And how can I work with it?
Yes, I'm looking at your chart now, although you can probably see me. So I'm looking at the actual Sri Jyoti star chart, and so we're doing off the cuff stuff here. So Jupiter is in the 9th house. So Jupiter is in Pisces in your Navamsha. I mean, what I personally feel, well, as regards relationship, I feel there will be like a great healing and a great success. That would certainly be the interpretation of Pushkara Jupiter in the 7th and Jupiter retrograde. And indeed, it's interesting you've asked the question, because of course Jupiter is highlighted now. You're in Jupiter Bhukti from so you're in Venus Jupiter from November 2013 until July 2016, and then you go into Venus Saturn, which is very different. So you'll be experiencing all facets of Jupiter, particularly if you remember I said Jupiter's now in your 1st house and the Guru Chandala Yoga. But see, the 7th house is also other people, and you could, I know you work in a media which could, enhance your relationship with the public at large during this time, definitely. Presumably through illustrating and art. But I definitely feel that Pushkara Jupiter in the 1st, that's retrograde, has the capacity to make like a great success of relationship. And I've previous obviously clients with Pushkara Jupiter, and Pushkara Jupiter has it is seen as the most successful Pushkara. Is there any other points?
Well, back with Jupiter again, not a question,
Yes.
but a point. Just, I thought it was interesting with Jupiter going into my first house now, and then Rahu joining that in January. I'm hoping it's going to be successful because I have my first authored and illustrated picture book coming out next year.
Well, that fits totally.
Yeah, in April. So fingers crossed. Fame and fortune will be mine, and I'll try and remember you, Michael.
Oh, thank you. I was just wondering, is your artistic style solely the illustrated figures that I've seen?
No, I've got quite a lot of styles.
I thought so.
Yeah, I've just sort of focused on probably the ones that you've seen for children's illustration, but I used to do a lot of graphic novels actually in illustration.
That's funny that, yeah. You see, I've got a sort of possible commission. I don't know whether you'd feel it would suit you, and that is at the moment I'm writing a novel on the gods and goddesses of the ancient Irish, and on the cover I want the Morrigan and the Dagda. So the Morrigan is their war goddess, but of course that has a higher ethical manifestation as standing up for ourselves and our essence. And the Dagda is the great god. He has a sort of cauldron of bounty, and he gives life or death. I mean, are you into drawing ancient Irish gods and goddesses at all?
I specialise in that. Yep.
Well, so I will arrange a Skype session, and I'll send you material on them. That's wonderful,
okay.
Utterly wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. So, okay. So what I'd like to do now is simply say that the next webinar is in a fortnight's time. They're always fortnightly. It's at 9 o'clock. And we're looking at Yvonne's chart, and of course Yvonne's main specialism is Western psychodynamic astrology, but even so we'll be drawing on both charts, and we'll be looking at the charts of the members of this group at a fortnightly interval until November the 11th, when we move over to topics. And so I'm presenting, I'm preparing rather, how to interpret your Navamsha, your chart of soul and marriage. And that's a big, big topic. So that will be on November the 11th. And then there's a couple more, I think 2 more before Christmas, when I would be open to people writing in on topics they'd like me to cover. I forgot to say that in Navamsha I'll also be looking at Rashi Tulya, how you analyze the messages your soul is sending you in this life. So anyway, that's on November the 11th. So I could handle 3 topics. I mean, it's something I'm writing about in vast depth just at the moment, because I think I'm going to do a book on it, is Gandanta, which are the 3 very difficult zones in the birth chart that Western astrology knows nothing of. And they can be narrowly defined or more widely defined in Vedic astrology. And so what does it mean to have a planet in the Gandanta zones, the transition points from water sign to fire sign, points of dissolution and danger? I mean, but people may not want that because it's a bit specialist. So, this is just a request for members of the group, if they wouldn't mind nominating between you 3 topics in addition to Navamsha. So I'd very much like to thank Louise, and I feel this is a great gateway for you, partly because of the transits through your first house, and partly through your first Saturn return. And indeed, I mean, you may be very busy, but if you wanted to explore visionary work, I could certainly sort of, I have modules from other courses you'd be welcome to use. I've done a lot of, deity visualization from Tibetan Buddhism and Hinduism, and the ancient Irish deities. And of course, the shamanic work as well. And indeed, if you wanted, to do vision work, to contact the Morrigan and the Dagda for the novel cover. That I'm just trying to say, because I was so impressed at the many, many visionary indicators in your chart. So just simply let me know what your thoughts and wishes are there, and we will set up hopefully a Skype session anyway, where I could share what the novel's about. And if you're not too sort of terrified, having heard what it's about, the cover will be wonderful. So I'd like to say, I think, thank you absolutely to everyone. What a wonderful, vibrant and special group this is. And in fact, we're operating on 3 continents, and yet sharing astrology, Vedic astrology, Western astrology, and healing. So thank you to everybody, and I'll stop the broadcast now.